look at you now, you're alright.
Hello. Welcome back to She's Doing All Right. This is the episode of everything they do not tell you about pregnancy and postpartum and birth. Not necessarily in that order, as I'm sure you know. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm here trying to make room for candid conversations about motherhood, mental health, and whatever else I feel like talking about that week. So as we jump into this episode, I will let you know that I do believe that there's no such thing as TMI with the girls. However, there is TMI for social media posts. And luckily for you, the TMI is just coming out tonight. Even though this is a public thing, I am going to be sharing a few things that are kind of disgusting. But that's just part of life, to be honest, especially when we're doing like pregnancy, postpartum, and all of the above. So that's why this is not such a hot topic. We're going to jump in with everything that is like the nitty gritty stuff of pregnancy. Are we ready? This is what everybody talks about. Oh, you're going to have morning sickness. You're going to have food aversions. You're going to have really intense cravings. Everyone will, without a doubt, make a joke about like, oh, have you craved pickles and ice cream yet? If they're like over the age of 40 and you're like, shut up. That wasn't funny because you're irritable. But those are all the things that we already know. What they don't tell you in this one's like pretty, some people do know this. Morning sickness is not, first of all, just the morning. And second of all, it's not just in the first trimester. Sometimes it lasts the entire pregnancy. That was my experience with my first, which by the way, all of this is my own experience. It was awful. My first experience, by 5 months, I was like, I'm never doing this again. And if I could go back to pre-pregnancy and show myself a glimpse of what this would be like, I would just never have kids. It was that bad. Like I was so miserable. The food aversions, they can be really, really strong. And sometimes even like a photo or a video or someone mentioning it will like make you puke. I had to run to the bathroom one time because we were watching TV and a burger commercial came up. And for what, I wasn't eating meat when I was pregnant with my first. And this picture of a burger was like it's trying to be juicy, which, ew, I don't want to see a juicy burger dripping anything. Even saying it right now is like kind of gross. And I'm not pregnant. I will never be again. It was so disgusting that I like gagged and my husband started laughing because he thought I was just joking. And then I had to run to the washroom and throw up. And he was like, do we want to like turn off the TV? I'm like, just turn off the TV. We can watch a movie or something where I know what's going to be in the movie, but like I'm not risking commercials anymore. So yeah, food aversions can be very intense and it can be the whole time. Your sense of smell is really heightened. I don't know if some people talk about this, but like for myself, my sense of smell was heightened in general, but my husband smelled like rotten milk for 2 weeks in my first pregnancy and 1 week in my second. I had totally forgotten about it by the second pregnancy, but then he came home one day and I went to go hug him and I was like, that milk smell is back. Like you need to go shower. And when that was the first time, I made him go shower. He came out of the shower. I'm like, did you use soap? Like all I smell is rotten milk. It's disgusting. I'm like, go wash your clothes, go like anything else. And then I was like, it's just you. This is just how my body's reacting to you right now, which I felt so bad about, but like gross. It's so gross. Okay, this is the TMI part. Second trimester discharge. Yeah, you heard that right. Stock up on pads, panty liners. It is disgusting. If like there's a normal amount of discharge as a woman all the time. The vagina cleans itself. That is normal. When I talk about like post-second trimester discharge and sometimes even into the third trimester, I'm talking about like I needed to change my panty liner once to twice a day. I was constantly disgusted and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just, I don't even really understand the point of it, but talk to my doctor. It's normal. I Googled it. It's normal. I'm not the only one who's dealt with that, but nobody talks about that. Like I've seen one other person openly talk about it. It's disgusting. It's like one of my least favorite parts about pregnancy. This one, I feel like some people do talk about, but your areolas, if you've never really thought about them, they're going to make sure you're thinking about them this time. And there is a purpose. They're going to get big and dark. And it's so that when babies are born like blind little kittens, but they can see their dark shapes and they smell. So the areola is large so that they can like zero in on the nipple and eat and find food. So that part's kind of cool. It definitely made me feel better about the size of my areolas. And good news is that for most of us, for myself anyway, and my friends, they do lighten up again and they get back to smaller normal size. Like sometimes even within the breastfeeding time, but definitely afterwards. So I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but thank goodness for me, I did not have to deal with that. Can you imagine? I already, like, I'm pretty open about this. I have 2 separate size boobs. Like one is like a B, the other one's like a double D, something like that. I don't even know the proper sizing, because how am I supposed to size myself when I've got 2 different things? Let's just say they don't sit evenly. They are distant related cousins, not sisters. Not even, we're questioning if they're related, okay? That is something that is just happening from breastfeeding. It's pretty common. Everybody has like one side that produces more milk than the other for the most part. And sometimes this just happens. So imagine that I had a droopy little boob and a big, high up, perky little guy, and now I've got massive areolas on them forever. Girl, that would not be fun. It's not my ideal. Maybe it's your ideal. It's not my ideal. Last thing that I can talk about. Oh, 2 more things on the pregnancy. So the one is that people talk about your feet getting bigger, but your nose and your lips will get bigger too. I looked unrecognizable at the end of my first pregnancy because I was carrying so much extra water weight, and the water will go into your nose and your lips mostly, and just like your nose gets wider. They call it pregnancy nose, and then your lips, they just get like fuller, I guess. I looked like I had filler during my pregnancy. And the last part about the pregnancy that people don't really talk about is that you can't use a lot of your standard skincare and like makeup. Did you know that? I did not. So things like chemical peels, there's no Botox, no fillers, retinol, certain like acids in different skincare creams. I guess it can like go into the skin, and then there's a chance it can go to the bloodstream or something. So you have to put everything on hold for like minimum 10 months. And then if you want to breastfeed, like another year or so, or however long you breastfeed for. So that being said, I do know of a pregnancy safe retinol that I love, Stun Collective, blah, blah, blah. I talk about it all the time. So grateful that I discovered it because it's plant-based, and so you can use that one. So that's, I guess, the last thing I'll say about the pregnancy. Did you know that there is a plant-based pregnancy safe skincare retinol thing? Fantastic. Moving into what they don't tell you about birth. What they do tell us about birth first is that it's gonna hurt. They tell us that epidurals are great. They tell us that there's a lot of blood. They talk about birth plans, connecting with baby, all this stuff. What they don't tell us about birth. This is gonna be a little bit of a different version than the pregnancy angle. So you can totally speak up and be demanding. You can request a new doctor if they're not advocating for you, if they're not working for you. It doesn't mean you're gonna get it, but speak up and let them know that you're also there because you are their patient. One thing I've really noticed in both my pregnancies is that they're there inspecting the baby, not you. And you're like, okay, but I'm still the person that's doing this. The baby should be secondary to me, in my opinion. Some people are like, save the baby. I'm like, yes, but also I don't know. It's a whole lot of the thing there. But anyway, you can speak up. You can use your voice. During my second pregnancy, my first one, they voluntarily shut the lights down. It was super quiet, zen. It was such a good birth. Like, it was the highlight of my entire pregnancy, which was otherwise terrible. My first birth was everything I could have hoped it would be. My second birth was a little more chaotic. It was pretty rushed, and the lights were on full blast. So I had to request that they turn the lights down, and I could tell that it kind of irritated the doctor, but he was also like, okay, turn the lights down. So we got a dimmer light, and him and the nurse, it still wasn't quite as dark as I wanted it to be, but they worked together. And it's because later I found out that my daughter was face up and she was having some issues with her like blood or heart rate or whatever. So they were preparing to get like a NICU team and everything in there, but they didn't want to tell me that because they didn't want to stress out the mom. So I totally understand that, because I think if they had told me during the pushing part, that would have stressed me out. However, not telling me led to like a lot other issues. Anyway, now we're like way off topic. Let's go back to what this is. So yeah, you can tell people what you need. Talk about it. Use your voice. The second thing that people don't talk about is that the stitches are gonna hurt probably more than the birth. And I don't know if it's just that the adrenaline's worn off or like what this, like why it works this way. But with both my kids, I had a first or second degree tear with my first and a first degree tear with my second. So the stitches were, I don't know why, they were excruciating. I had an epidural. Excruciating is maybe a bit dramatic, but I could feel, and I can still feel now, the feeling of string being pulled through my skin. Getting the stitches after the first one, I was like, why does this sting? Why can I feel this so much more intensely than the birth itself? And that was painful. So yeah, they don't always tell you that the stitches are gonna hurt, but I think it's because everything's just raw and adrenaline has like dropped. Let's move into contractions. People tell you that these are gonna be like a really intense period cramp. Lucky you, if that's what it is. I've had awful periods for as long as I can remember. I've never had to throw up from them. Nope, one time I did, but that was like not normal. But they're always been like very painful. And this is not, a contraction is like period cramp and then your period poops. And then there's also like kicking from the baby. So, or like things are squeezing. It's so painful. Contractions are really intense. And for me, maybe it's because I had the induction. In fact, I'm actually positive it's because I had the inductions both times. The contractions went from 0 to 10 and then like 10 to 60 real fast. I never had the feeling of just like, oh, that was like a little cramp. Like, oh, baby's coming soon. I'm starting to contractions. It was just intense from the beginning. Speaking with contractions, you're going to get a contraction and be like unable to speak. You might black out. Like you're just different planet. And then it fades and you like pick up a conversation like how I'm talking right now, like totally fine. You're like, oh yeah, that was just like a weird little thing. And then you're like, oh my God. And you're like breathing, trying to get through the next contraction. It rises, it falls, and then you go right back to normal conversation. And it's really funny when you're in it because you're like, this is so weird. And I like talking to my husband, I'm like, yeah, I hope our little guy's safe at home. Like we're in this is our first time being away from him. And then like, I can't talk for 5 minutes because I'm in the contraction. So that always makes me laugh, but people don't really talk about how you can go from like, yeah, feeling absolutely everything and then you feel nothing. And it just waves of that for hours. The epidural doesn't really hurt as much as it is uncomfortable. And everyone talks about how great the epidural is. But yeah, I would definitely recommend getting it. I am terrified of needles, but less so now because the epidural it's very intimidating and it's incredibly uncomfortable to get done. But like, I don't remember it. I don't feel like, I feel how I was feeling during it, but even in the moment, it's uncomfortable. And then everything's numb. And I think maybe it's because it goes like pain and then you're fine. So yeah, epidural doesn't really hurt at the end of the day, not compared to anything else. And also, pro tip, get the epidural because then every single time you need to get a needle after that, you're like, this is fine. Things that used to make me so queasy before are not an issue now. So with my first baby, this is what it felt like to push the baby out. And no one ever talks about pushing the baby out. With my first one, everything was so smooth. Contractions were really good. My body did like 90% of the work. I didn't really have to push. I only pushed for 30 minutes with him. When we finally, we pushed his head out and then they make you stop for a second. And then with the next contraction, the shoulders and the body slips out. And I don't know why this was the feeling. My epidural wasn't really working at the end of my first one. So his head got out and then it was like dumping an octopus out of a bucket of water. Like it just was like, I don't even know how to properly describe it, but that's the best way. It was slimy and gross, and all of a sudden you just like feel empty. Like everything's over and it's just floop. That's how it felt. Just like arms and legs just like flop out of a bucket of water. So the second birth, I was expecting that, but she was out before I even realized she was out because we pushed her head out and then they tell me to stop pushing. And then all of a sudden he's holding up my baby. I didn't even notice that like he pulled her out, but I think it's because she was face up. So 2 different ways that has happened. If you have had a different experience and you can like tell me what that felt like for you, please, please, please let me know, because the whole octopus thing was the very first thought. Like as I was birthing him, I was like, is this what it feels like for an octopus to get dumped in the water? The next thing is people are slowly talking about this, but I've only seen it because it's like kind of in my niche, I guess, in my algorithm. Labor is really boring. People don't really talk about that, but labor is so boring. Like everyone's like, bring your candles, bring your pillow. No, girl, bring a book, especially if you're getting an epidural. Like if the epidural works and you have time, you're not going to feel anything and you're just going to be sitting there. Bring a video game. Put games on your phone, bring a podcast. Like, it's boring. And lastly, for birth, is that it's really hard to sometimes bond with your baby. Not everybody bonds with the baby right away. For some people, it's like minutes or instantly, and other people, it's a couple of weeks. It's weird. They're holding up this child being like, this is yours. And you're like, I know you. Your heartbeat's literally been my heartbeat for 10 months. But now you're like a stranger that I recognize, but I don't know. And I'm supposed to take you home and care for you. And like, it's such a weird concept. I felt that way with both kids. Like, that's my baby, but also like, who is that? So I feel like people don't really talk about that a lot. Moving into the postpartum, people tell you like, don't kiss the baby, ask people for help. And people talk about how breastfeeding will help you lose the weight faster. And they also talk about like 4 to 6 weeks of bleeding. What they don't talk about, breastfeeding does not make you lose weight. And also breastfeeding makes you a more likely chance to get pregnant because you're more fertile while you breastfeed. I don't know how people are still in the year of 2024 getting pregnant by saying, well, I was breastfeeding. I thought like, I don't have my period yet. And then they get pregnant like 3 months after their baby is born. If that's you and you like genuinely thought that pregnancy or that breastfeeding stopped pregnancy, I don't know. I'd like to say I'm not judging, but there's a little bit of judgment. But breastfeeding can actually make it harder for you to lose weight because your body's holding on to all the fat to make the milk. So yeah, fun fact. Everyone focuses on the first 6 weeks for like looking at postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. But did you know that it actually can last like up to the first year? Anything within the first 12 months of postpartum is classified as like postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. Everything changes constantly, like between sleep regressions and teething and milk supply and then like kids' milestones, especially when it's your first. Like, I feel like people really don't talk about like anything past the first 6 weeks. And truth be told, for me, my postpartum depression really sank in at like after the first 3 months. So yeah, I feel like we need to start talking about like the 3 months to 12 months stage because people don't talk a lot about that. And that's where there's so many different changes. Baby starts being more alert and like, it's a lot to deal with. It takes 2 years for mom's hormones to balance out. And yeah, mentally, that first 2 years can be tough all around. Now we're jumping back into some of the TMI. Remember we talked about the discharge in trimester 2? I did know about the bleeding. With my first child, I bled for 5 weeks. It was a lot. And I like even called the nurse line one time because I was like, these are clots coming out at 4 weeks postpartum. Like, I'm so scared about this. This time with my second, we did not have much bleeding. I stopped bleeding around 10 days, 2 weeks, but I still was in pads for a long time because of the freaking discharge. I was soaking pad a day at minimum, sometimes 2 with just discharge. It was revolting. I have never been so disgusted by my own body. And I know that it's like, oh, it's a beautiful thing. It was not beautiful. I sent a picture of my pad to my friend to send to her nurse friends to be like, is this normal? And Google is no help because they say a discharge is normal after pregnancy or after birth. They say that if it's a yellowy clear, it's completely normal. However, if it's yellowy or green, then it's call the doctor because it's an infection. And I'm like, it just looks gross. Is it infection? I don't know. It wasn't, thank God. But yeah, it was really, really gross. Your best chance, people don't really talk about the resting post-birth, but your best chance is to have a freezer full of meals, get lots and lots of high protein snacks. I wish I had doubled up on the high protein snacks this time because I ended up giving them to my firstborn too, and have a ton of convenient foods because you're gonna just want snack foods all the time, and you don't really have a lot of energy to cook or think of meals. That's really it. I can cook, I can't always think of meals. One baby is up from her nap, so if you hear some baby sounds, it won't be for long. We're almost done. Sleep deprivation. People do talk a little bit about this, but not in this extreme sense. I felt like I would have liked a bit more information on it. But on the other side of that, you can't ever know what it's like until you experience it. People will say oh, I'm really tired, or I can't sleep this week, I've got insomnia. That's not the same. Sleep deprivation is true torture. It can lead into sleep psychosis. I would have so many nights where I would be holding my baby, I sit up to feed him, and I'd put him back, and then I'd wake up 15 minutes later in a panic, thinking that I'd crushed him, and in reality, I'm holding my pillow. Other times, I would go all night, and I'd wake up in his room on the floor, and I'm I have no idea how I got here, but I clearly fed you and changed you. You got a clean diaper, you're not crying, so you must have been fed, and you must have been changed, and I must have done it in some kind of zombie state. That part is truly terrifying. So sleep deprivation, I don't even know how to make that better, because your partner can only do so much. They can do the diapers, or if you're feeding bottles, then there's room for more help. Let's move into postpartum sex. So this is different for everybody. I really do wish that more people had talked about how different it would be for everyone, and depending on the way your tears go, and just your body before. I'm not a big fan of pregnancy sex, so probably by 7 or 8 months in both pregnancies, I just was I'm not into it, and that was that. Both times we waited quite a bit of time before we tried again, just because breastfeeding can tank your libido, but for some people it skyrockets it. My first time around was so painful. It felt like I was losing my virginity all over again. We tried having sex for the first time at 4 months with my first baby, and it did not feel good until 8 months postpartum. It was so painful. We had to go, it was very scientific. We didn't even try to have sex for fun. It was strict, just strictly for teaching my body that it's okay. I don't know if that's partly because of the postpartum depression or what that was, but I will say that second baby, this has been a lot different. I don't know if it's because I had a 1st-degree tear this time and a 2nd-degree tear the first time. I have friends who jumped right back on it at 6 weeks, and or sometimes even 4. For some people, it's not painful after birth. So I was prepared for it to be super painful after my second baby, and it was not. So I'm grateful for that. But wow, that postpartum sex it's a different journey for every single person. So you're just not going to know what it's like for you until you try it. But don't listen to your friends if they are talking about how fun it is and they're back at it at 6 or 7 weeks. That's okay. And it's okay if you're not really ready for 4 months or 6 months or 8 months. Just hopefully you have a partner that is understanding and willing to work with you. Last thing that people don't talk about in the postpartum experience is that all you really need for baby is diapers, wipes, and clothes, and some formula if you're not able to breastfeed. But you do not need anything else for baby. And I feel we stress ourselves out, and for what? Everything you need for baby can be picked up in a gas station on the way home. And even now with Amazon and online ordering, you can have it sent to your house within 24 hours. So don't stress. If you're like waiting to have a baby and you're thinking you don't have it all proper, it's okay. You're gonna have everything you need. Baby has everything they need. They just need you. They just need mom. So that's everything I can think of from my experiences that people did not talk about before pregnancy or tell me about pregnancy and birth and postpartum. Everyone's experiences are so different though. So this isn't like a fear-mongering thing because there's so many good things, but people are more likely to talk about the good things, right? Like we talk about how our bump looks or we talk about our energy levels. And then there's certain things that everyone does know that are just like more, I don't know, applied to just the general public. But yeah, so I hope that this is like informative / entertaining and hopefully not too gross. Man, I will never ever get over the discharge. I don't even know what my body's making it from. It was so gross. Oh, last thing I'll add in is that your milk, you can shoot milk really far from your nipples. If you're breastfeeding, you will be shocked at how powerful your nipples spray is. And I'll leave it there. So if there's anything that you feel like I missed, please let me know. You can send me an email at sarahmgcarter.com or you can leave it on an Instagram post. Sarah.g.carter is probably the best option right now because I can't figure out my login for my She's Doing All Right. So I'm still trying to figure that out because I haven't even gotten a post out from last week's episode. But yeah, feel free to leave a comment somewhere and let me know what I missed out on this. I had fun making it. I hope you had fun listening to it. If you have anything else that you'd like to message me about or any topics you'd like me to talk about, send me an email. Everything should be linked into the description below, and leave a comment and a rating if you'd like to. It really helps. And thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.
Look at you now, you're alive. Oh, look at you now, you're alright. When the nights are cold but the world's on fire and you're scared to fall 'cause it feels too high. Oh, look at you